Captain Lee Minute-Ho stared out the window of his ship at the burning planet below. New Sol Colony was supposed to be home to 50,000 humans. Now it was nothing but smoke and fire. His hands shook as he watched pieces of buildings float in space like broken toys. "Captain," said Park Ji-woo from her seat at the communications desk. Her voice was quiet and scared. "The Galactic Council is sending us a message." Minute-Ho closed his eyes for a moment. He knew what the message would say. For over 100 years, humans had been the galaxy's problem solvers. When two alien races started fighting, they called humans to make peace. When someone needed to do dangerous work, they sent humans. But humans were never allowed to sit at the big table where important decisions were made. What do they want now? Minute-Ho asked, even though he already knew. Ji-woo read from her screen. "They want us to meet with the Vorthans. To find a peaceful solution to what happened here." Her voice got angry. "They want us to make peace with the aliens who just killed our people." Lieutenant Kim So-young hit her desk hard with her fist. "Peace? They turned our colony into ash. There were children down there, families, grandparents. All dead." Minute-Ho remembered visiting New Seoul just 6 months ago. He had walked through the markets where human families sold Earth vegetables to alien visitors. He had watched children play in parks that looked just like the ones back home. Now those children were gone, turned to dust by Vorthan weapons. The worst part was that this was not the first time. For decades, humans had been pushed around by stronger alien races. When humans complained, the Galactic Council always said the same thing. "Be patient. Do not cause trouble. Think about the bigger picture." But what about the human picture? What about human lives? "Sir," Ji-woo said softly. "Admiral Choi is calling from Earth. He says it is very important." The space above Minute-Ho's desk filled with light, and suddenly Admiral Choi Dae-hyun was standing there like a ghost. But this was not the same man Minute-Ho remembered. Choi had always been calm and patient, always ready to talk instead of fight. This man looked different. His eyes burned with something Minute-Ho had never seen before. "All human ships will return to Earth immediately," Choi said in a voice like steel. "Do not explain anything to alien authorities. Do not say goodbye. Just come home." "Admiral," Minute-Ho started to say, "what about our mission too?" "There will be no more missions," Choi cut him off. "No more peace talks. No more cleaning up other people's messes. No more being the galaxy's servants." He paused, and when he spoke again, his words sent chills down Minute-Ho's spine. "It is time for the galaxy to learn what humans really are when we stop pretending to be harmless." The message ended, leaving the bridge in total silence. Minute-Ho looked around at his crew. They were all thinking the same thing. Something big was about to happen. Something that would change everything. "Set course for Earth," Minute-Ho ordered. "Maximum speed." As their ship turned away from the dead colony, Minute-Ho thought about human history. His grandmother had told him stories about the old days on Earth, before humans reached the stars. She told him about wars and struggles, about how humans had survived ice ages and disasters that would have killed other species. She told him about how humans never gave up, no matter how bad things got. "We were not always peaceful," she used to say. "We learned to be peaceful because we were strong enough to choose peace over war. But never forget, child. We chose to be kind. We were not born that way." For over a century, humans had chosen to be the galaxy's peacekeepers. They had chosen to help instead of hurt. They had chosen to build instead of destroy. But choice meant they could also choose differently. Minute-Ho remembered all the times alien diplomats had laughed at human requests for equal treatment. He remembered how they called humans the useful pets behind their backs. He remembered how they always expected humans to do the dangerous work, to sacrifice their lives for alien causes, to smile and be grateful for scraps. The Vorthans had made a mistake. They thought humans were weak because humans chose peace. They thought humans were helpless because humans helped others. They did not understand that there was a difference between being unable to fight and choosing not to fight. As Earth grew larger in their viewing screen, Minute-Ho felt something waking up inside his chest. It was something that had been sleeping for a very long time. Something his ancestors had known but his generation had forgotten. Humans were not peaceful because they were weak. They were peaceful because they were dangerous enough to choose mercy over revenge. But mercy was a gift that could be taken away. The galaxy had spent a century taking human kindness for granted. They had mistaken patience for cowardice, diplomacy for weakness, and service for slavery. They had pushed and pushed, thinking humans would always bend and never break. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Looking at the burning remains of New Seoul one last time, Minute Ho made a promise to the dead. The galaxy would remember this day. They would remember when humans finally stopped being patient. They would remember when the species that conquered death worlds and reached for the stars decided to stop pretending they were harmless. The awakening had begun. Commander Yoon Jae-minute walked through tunnels deep under the city of Seoul. He had lived on Earth his whole life, but he had never seen these places before. The walls were made of metal and stone, stretching far into darkness. Strange machines hummed with power, and the air smelled like oil and electricity. "This has been here all along?" he asked Admiral Choi, who walked beside him with calm steps. "For 60 years, Choi replied. "Every time humans went to make peace between fighting aliens, we learned something new. Every time we fixed their problems, we studied their weapons. Every time they treated us like servants, we planned for the day when serving would end." They entered a huge room filled with light. Thousands of humans worked at machines that built weapons and ships. The weapons looked nothing like the simple tools humans were supposed to have. These were built for war, designed by minds that understood fighting better than any alien race. Jae-minute watched a woman put together something that looked like a gun, but moved like liquid metal. "What is that?" "Plasma cutter," said Dr. Han Yoo-jin, joining them. She was small and wore thick glasses, but her eyes were sharp. "It can cut through any alien armor we have seen. We tested it on metal from every major species in the galaxy." "How long have you been preparing for this?" Jae-minute asked. "Since the day humans first left Earth," Yoo-jin answered. "Did you think we were really just peacekeepers? We were spies. We were students. We were getting ready." They walked to another area where people trained for battle. But this was not normal fighting practice. These humans moved like dancers, fast and smooth, using tactics that seemed impossible. They fought like they could read each other's minds. "Aliens think humans are weak because we are smaller than most of them," explained Captain Kang Do-hyun, who was watching the training. "They think we are slow because we do not have claws or thick skin. But they never understood what made us strong." "What is that?" Jae-minute asked. "We adapt," Kang said simply. "Every other species in the galaxy reached the top of their home planet and then stopped growing. They became comfortable. They forgot how to change, how to survive, how to fight for their lives. But humans? We never stopped fighting. We just learned to hide it." Dr. Yoo-jin brought up pictures on a big screen. They showed the biology of different alien races. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a Vorthan. "Strong, fast, natural weapons. But their brains are simple. They think the same way their ancestors did a million years ago." She changed the picture to show human biology. "Humans look weak. Small muscles, no claws, soft skin. But our brains never stopped evolving. We can learn, adapt, and change faster than any species in the galaxy. That is why they needed us to solve their problems. They could not think of new solutions." Jae-minute felt like he was seeing his own species for the first time. All his life, he had been taught that humans were the peaceful ones, the helpers, the ones who fixed problems with words instead of weapons. But that was only part of the truth. "We chose to be peaceful," Admiral Choi said, as if reading his thoughts. "When humans first met alien races, we could have fought them. We could have taken what we wanted by force. But we decided to try a different way. We thought if we were kind and helpful, they would treat us as equals." "But they never did," Jae-minute said. "No. They saw our kindness as weakness. They thought because we chose not to fight, we could not fight. They forgot that choice means we can also choose differently." They walked to a window that looked out into space. Hundreds of human ships floated there, but they looked nothing like the peaceful vessels Jae-minute knew. These were built for war, covered in weapons that could destroy planets. "Where did all these ships come from?" he asked. "We built them in secret," Choi explained. "Every diplomatic mission was also a supply run. Every peace treaty included trade agreements that let us get materials we needed. For decades, we have been preparing for this moment." A young officer ran up to them. "Admiral, we are getting reports from across the galaxy. Without human peacekeepers, 17 different wars have started. The aliens cannot solve their own problems." Choi smiled, but it was not a happy smile. Of course they cannot. They forgot how to think for themselves. They relied on us for everything. Jae-minute understood now. For over a century, humans had not just been keeping peace. They had been making the alien races dependent on them. Without humans to solve their problems, the aliens were helpless. "It is almost time," Choi announced to everyone in the room. "Send the message to all human forces across the galaxy." The message was simple but powerful: We are no longer your servants. We are no longer your problem solvers. We are no longer your peacekeepers. Today, you will learn what humans truly are when we stop pretending to be harmless. As the message spread across space, J-Minute felt something changing inside himself. The gentle, patient human he had always been was still there. But underneath, something much older and stronger was waking up. Something that remembered what it took to survive on a dangerous world, to build cities, to reach for the stars. The galaxy was about to meet the real humans. Not the servants who had bowed and smiled for a century, but the survivors who had conquered death itself to make it to the stars. The awakening was complete. Fleet Commander Thexril of the Vorthan Dominion felt confident as his warships moved through space toward the Kepler system. His fleet was made of 200 massive battleships, each one bigger than 3 human vessels put together. The weapons on his ships had destroyed entire worlds before. The humans will surrender as soon as they see us, he told his officers over the communication system. These soft creatures have never won a real fight. They only know how to talk and make treaties. When they see our power, they will beg for mercy like they always do. His officers laughed and agreed. Everyone in the galaxy knew that humans were weak. They ran away from fights and asked for help from the Galactic Council when someone was mean to them. The destruction of New Sol Colony had been easy because the humans there had no real defenses. "Sir," called out the sensor operator, "we are reaching the edge of the Kepler system. But I am not seeing any human ships." "Of course not," Thexril said with a cruel smile. "They probably ran away when they heard we were coming. Cowards always run." But something felt wrong. The space around them was too quiet, too empty. Usually, when the Vorthans attacked the system, there were at least some defensive ships, some signs of panic, some desperate calls for help. Here, there was nothing. "Wait," the sensor operator said, his voice suddenly worried. "I am getting strange readings. There is something out there, but I cannot see what it is." That was when Captain Kang Do-hyun's strike force appeared. One moment, the space around the Vorthan fleet was empty. The next moment, 50 human ships materialized like ghosts becoming real. They had been there all along, hidden by technology the Vorthans did not know existed. "This is Captain Kang of the Human Defense Force," came a calm voice over the communications. "You have committed genocide against human civilians. You will surrender now, or you will be destroyed." Thexril laughed so hard he could barely speak. 50 little human ships against 200 Vorthan dreadnoughts? You must be joking. We will crush you like insects. "You are welcome to try," Kang replied, and his voice was as cold as space itself. The battle began. Lieutenant Seo Eun-ji sat in her small fighter ship, watching as the huge Vorthan vessels turned their massive guns toward the human fleet. She had trained for this moment for 5 years, but seeing those enormous weapons pointed at her still made her heart race. "All fighters, remember your training," came Commander Yoon Jae-min's voice over the radio. "They are big and strong, but they are also slow and stupid. Use that against them." The Vorthans fired first. Beams of energy that could melt mountains shot through space toward the human ships. But when the light cleared, the human vessels were no longer where they had been. They moved like birds in a storm, fast and unpredictable, dancing between the alien weapons. "Impossible," Thexril whispered as he watched his fleet's shots miss again and again. "How are they so fast?" The answer came in the form of human return fire. But these were not the simple weapons the galaxy expected from humans. These guns fired energy that seemed to think for itself, bending around obstacles, striking weak points that should have been impossible to hit. Eun-ji watched her targeting computer lock onto a Vorthan ship's power core, deep inside layers of armor that should have protected it. "Target acquired," she reported, and fired. Her weapon cut through the alien ship like a knife through paper. The massive dreadnought, which had terrorized dozens of worlds, broke apart in seconds. "What kind of weapons are those?" Thexril screamed at his science officer. "I do not know, sir," came the terrified reply. "They seem to be designed specifically to defeat our armor, our shields, our defenses. It is like they knew exactly how to hurt us." That was exactly right. For decades, humans had studied Vorthan technology every time they were called to mediate disputes involving the Dominion. They had learned every weakness, every design flaw, every way to break Vorthan ships. The weapons they used now had been built with one purpose: to destroy Vorthan vessels as efficiently as possible. Commander J-Minute watched from his command ship as another group of enemy vessels tried to escape. "Fighter squadrons, do not let any of them get away. They need to take a message back to their people." "What message is that, sir?" asked one of his pilots. "That the galaxy has changed, J-Minute replied. That humans are no longer victims. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, half the Vorthan fleet was destroyed and the rest was running away as fast as they could. Not a single human ship had been lost. Should we chase them, Captain? Unji asked as she watched the surviving Vorthan vessels flee. No, Kang answered. Let them go. Fear is a better teacher than death. They will tell others what happened here. They will spread the word that humans are no longer the weak species they can push around. Across the galaxy, similar battles were happening. Human forces that had been pretending to be peaceful for over a century were revealing their true power. Ships that aliens thought were for exploration and diplomacy suddenly showed weapons that could destroy anything in space. The hegemony, which had enslaved 17 different species, found their slave worlds protected by human fleets that appeared from nowhere. The Morvac Federation, which had been stealing resources from human colonies for decades, discovered that their main fleet had been surrounded and captured while they slept. But the humans did not act like conquerors. They freed slaves, protected the weak, and targeted only military forces. They showed mercy to those who surrendered and helped those who had been oppressed. We could have done this any time in the last 100 years, Captain Kang broadcast to the galaxy. We chose not to because we believed in peace. But you mistook our choice for weakness. Today you learned the difference. The awakening was spreading, and the galaxy would never be the same. Director O'Hiram sat in the intelligence center on the moon, watching dozens of screens that showed what was happening across the galaxy. Each screen told the same story: chaos. Without humans to solve their problems, alien civilizations were falling apart like broken toys. The Zentari Republic just declared war on the Morvac Federation, reported her assistant, pointing to one of the screens. That makes 23 new wars this week. Hiram nodded but was not surprised. Of course they did. For over a century, we have been solving their fights for them. They never learned how to talk to each other without us in the middle. On another screen, she watched two alien ambassadors screaming at each other in what used to be a peaceful trade meeting. Without human diplomats to guide the conversation, they could not even agree on simple things like where to sit or who should talk first. It is like watching children fight, said Lieutenant Park Minute-jun, who was monitoring communications. They keep calling for human peacekeepers to come fix their problems, but we are not answering. Good, Hiram said firmly. Let them learn to solve their own problems for once. Meanwhile, Captain Nam Ji-hoon was leading a liberation fleet toward the Sirius sector. For 50 years, the hegemony had controlled 17 different alien species, treating them like animals and stealing their resources. The hegemony thought they were safe because their military was strong and their space stations were heavily defended. They were wrong. Target their command center, Ji-hoon ordered as his ships approached the main hegemony station. But be careful not to hit the slave quarters. The battle was over before it really began. Human ships had studied hegemony defenses for decades while pretending to negotiate trade agreements. They knew exactly where to shoot to break through the station's shields, exactly which systems to disable to stop their weapons, exactly how to rescue the slaves without putting them in danger. All chains are broken, Ji-hoon broadcast to the freed worlds as hegemony forces surrendered. You are under human protection now. No one will ever enslave you again. The response was immediate and overwhelming. 17 different species, some of which had been slaves for hundreds of years, sent messages of thanks and worship to their human liberators. They offered to serve humanity in any way they could, to give humans anything they wanted. We do not want servants, Ji-hoon replied to all of them. We want friends. We want partners. We want you to be free and strong enough to protect yourselves. This confused many of the alien species. They had been ruled by the strong for so long that they could not understand why humans would free them without asking for something in return. But as days passed and humans continued to help without demanding payment, the freed aliens began to understand something important. Humans were different from every other powerful species in the galaxy. Colonel Bae Soo-jin was busy with her own mission, taking apart the governments that had oppressed humanity for over a century. But she was not doing it with armies or invasions. She was doing it with information. Release the files, she ordered her team of intelligence officers. Everything we have learned about corruption in the Galactic Council. Every secret deal, every bribe, every lie they told their own people. For decades, human diplomats had been sitting in alien government meetings, taking notes, recording conversations, and documenting crimes. The aliens had never worried about this because they thought humans were harmless servants who would never use the information against them. They were wrong about that too. Within hours, Communication networks across the galaxy were flooded with evidence of corruption and crime. Citizens of dozens of worlds learned that their leaders had been stealing from them, lying to them, and making secret deals that hurt their own people. Governments that had seemed strong and stable for centuries collapsed in days as their people rose up in anger. They never understood, Sujin explained to her officers as they watched another corrupt regime fall. They thought our desire for peace made us weak. They could not imagine that we were strong enough to choose mercy over revenge. But mercy is a choice that can be taken away. The most shocking discovery came when humans released files about the Galactic Council itself. For over a century, the Council had presented itself as a force for peace and justice in the galaxy. But the human records showed the truth. The Council had been taking bribes, making secret agreements with criminal organizations, and deliberately starting small wars to keep other species weak and dependent. "We have been their tools," Admiral Choi announced in a broadcast that reached every world in the galaxy. "They used us to clean up problems they created. They kept us busy solving conflicts they started so we would not have time to see what they were really doing." The revelation destroyed what little trust remained between different alien species. If the Galactic Council had been lying about everything, what else had been a lie? Which peace treaties were real? Which trade agreements were honest? Which allies could be trusted? Panic spread faster than human fleets. Ancient enemies formed desperate alliances against humanity, but their fleets moved like antiques compared to ships designed by the species that had spent millennia learning to adapt and survive. Each battle ended the same way, complete human victory that looked almost effortless. In the ruins of the old council chambers on Centauri Prime, former Councillor Vextar of the Morvac Federation sent his final message before surrendering his government to human forces. "We made a terrible mistake," he broadcast to his homeworld. "We thought the humans were our servants because they chose to serve. We thought they were weak because they chose peace. We thought they were stupid because they chose to help instead of hurt. But choice means they could always choose differently. We have awakened something that was never sleeping. It was just being patient. And now our patience has run out." As his words spread across the galaxy, billions of beings began to understand a simple but terrifying truth. The most dangerous enemy is not the one who cannot show mercy, but the one who chooses not to. Admiral Lee Minute-Ho stood in the central plaza of New Sol Colony, watching children play under the bright afternoon sun. 2 years had passed since the Vorthons had turned this place into ash and death. Now it was alive again, full of laughter and hope. But these were not just human children playing in the rebuilt parks. There were young Zentari with their blue skin and large eyes, small hegemony refugees with their furry faces, and even a few Vorthon youngsters whose parents had surrendered during the war. They all played together, speaking a mix of languages that somehow everyone understood. "The new Confederation Council approved our education proposal," said Ambassador Park So-hee as she walked up to him with a data pad. "Every world will teach the real history now. No more lies about humans being naturally peaceful. No more hiding what we are really capable of." Minute-Ho smiled as he watched a human girl help a young Zentari who had fallen down while playing. The kindness was real, but now everyone understood that it came from choice, not weakness. Good. Truth is better than comfortable lies. Dr. Kim Tae-young, who now ran the new Department of Species Relations, joined them on the observation deck that overlooked the plaza. "The university applications keep coming in. Every major alien world wants to send students to study human history and psychology. They all want to understand how we stayed strong while appearing gentle." "What are they learning?" Minute-Ho asked. "That survival is not about being the biggest or strongest," Tae-young replied. "It is about being able to change, to adapt, to learn from mistakes. Humans conquered their death world not by fighting it, but by learning to work with it." Below them, the memorial wall bore 50,000 names, every human who died when the Vorthons attacked the original colony. But next to those names were millions of others, aliens who had been slaves, victims of corruption, beings who had died in wars caused by the old Galactic Council's greed. The wall was a reminder of why change had been necessary. "Do you ever miss the old days?" So he asked. "When things were simpler, when we just did what the council told us to do." Minute-Ho thought about it for a moment. "I miss believing that kindness would be enough. But I do not miss being helpless to protect the people I cared about." A young Vorthon approached the memorial wall with his human teacher. The teacher explained that his people had once been enemies, but now they were friends. The child looked confused, so the teacher told him a simple story. Long ago, humans and Vorthons did not understand each other. Vorthons thought humans were weak because humans chose not to fight. Humans thought Vorthons were evil because they hurt innocent people. But both were wrong. Humans were not weak, just patient. Vorthans were not evil, just afraid. When they finally talked honestly to each other, they became friends. The story was simple enough for a child to understand, but it contained a truth that had taken the galaxy years to learn. Strength without wisdom led to cruelty. Wisdom without strength led to victimhood. But strength and wisdom together could create something beautiful. The economic reports are interesting, so he said, changing the subject. Every world that joined our confederation willingly has seen their prosperity increase by at least 50%. The ones we had to force are still struggling, but even they are doing better than before. This did not surprise Minute-Ho. The old galaxy had been built on fear, corruption, and exploitation. The strong took from the weak, the corrupt stole from the honest, and everyone lived in constant worry about war and betrayal. The new system was built on cooperation, truth, and mutual protection. When people were not afraid, they could focus on building instead of just surviving. There is something else, Tai Young said quietly. Intelligence reports say some of the Outer Rim species are forming a new alliance against us. They call themselves the Free Galaxy Movement. They say humans have become the new tyrants. Minute-Ho was not worried. Let them try. If they want to fight us, we will defend ourselves. If they want to oppress others, we will stop them. But if they just want to be left alone, that is fine too. You do not think we should act first? So he asked. Stop them before they become a real threat. No, Minute-Ho said firmly. That is what the old powers would have done. They would have attacked out of fear, created enemies where none existed, and started wars to prevent wars. We are better than that. As the sun began to set, the children in the plaza were called home by their parents. Human and alien families walked together toward housing complexes that had been designed for multiple species. The architecture was strange but beautiful, combining the best ideas from dozens of different cultures. You know what I think is our greatest victory? Minute-Ho said as they watched the families leave. What? Asked his companions. Those children do not see each other as human or alien. They just see friends. In one generation, we have created something that never existed before in galactic history, a civilization where being different does not make you an enemy. That night, Minute-Ho stood alone on his balcony, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, beings on thousands of worlds were going to sleep without fear for the first time in centuries. Children were dreaming of futures where they could be whatever they wanted to be. Scientists were working on problems that mattered instead of weapons to kill their neighbors. The galaxy would indeed remember when humans finally stopped being patient. But they would not remember it as the day monsters were unleashed. They would remember it as the day when the universe's greatest survivors decided that survival was not enough, that everyone deserved to thrive. In the end, humanity's greatest victory was not conquest. It was proving that the strong could choose to lift up the weak, and that sometimes the most powerful thing in the universe is someone who is dangerous by nature but kind by choice. The new order was not perfect, but it was just. And that was enough.